Battlefield 6 Season 3 is here, and whatever doubts that I had about a Golmud Railway remake have been washed away by a flood of epic Battlefield moments. DICE absolutely cooked with this map. Railway to Golmud keeps some recognizable elements from the original map, but it's such a radical overhaul that it feels less like a remake and more of like a re-envisioning. On top of that, there's a ton of great improvements to vehicles, new guns, and a bunch of other things to check out. Let's dive in. So right off the bat, Railway to Golmud is exactly the kind of map that players have been asking for since the launch of the game. It's a massive map with huge airspaces that give vehicles tons of room to maneuver, hide, and even plan their attacks. It's actually been really refreshing to have somewhere to go that isn't my HQ spawn while I'm flying my helicopter around waiting for my flares to recharge. It's just a big map with lots of options. But this time around, unlike the original map, it is not just a vehicle user's paradise. The map features tons of cover, flanking routes, and other areas with protected sight lines that give infantry players almost total freedom to maneuver around. All the objective areas are much denser clusters of buildings that provide really good cover, but they're still kind of squishy enough that campers can be rooted out fairly quickly. The one exception is the warehouses at Objective B that just aren't fully destructible. There's also tons of dark hiding spots that players can sit in. There's also one of those steel mobile-based buildings on the D objective that is always obnoxious to try and get people out of. Possibly the coolest update to the map, though, is the moving train. In the original version of Golmud, the train was a cool idea, but it just didn't really play out in a fun or interesting way. It would always just go back to the base of the team that captured it. There wasn't a lot of cool gameplay around it. But in Battlefield 6, the train is a much more extensive vehicle with multiple cars. It also moves towards the enemy base when you capture it, which is the opposite of before. So it's basically always in play around the center of the map as both teams fight over it. Obviously, you're very exposed to vehicles while you're on the train since it's surrounded by elevated positions, and it doesn't really have much cover protecting you from air vehicles. But despite it being a potential kill box, I still found it to play quite well and had a ton of fun battling over it. Honestly, the only annoying thing about the train is that there's a hiding spot on one of the cars that makes it very hard to spot players, and also the draw distance on some of the car details tends to pop in a little aggressively, especially when you're flying around. It does make it more challenging to try and spot enemies. Now, not only are vehicle players getting hands down the best map for vehicles in BF6, but they're also getting a ton of really good vehicle updates. With this Season 3 patch, vehicles can now automatically regen to full health instead of being stuck at critical levels until repaired by an engineer or resupply station. Ground vehicles also handle much better. I've noticed that they have a lot more rotational torque, which makes even the heavier tanks feel just much more responsive and enjoyable to drive and aim. Anti-vehicle gadgets also require an additional hit to take out most tanks now, which has helped reduce just how vulnerable they felt, which, especially on a big open map like this, is going to go a long way. Damage against vehicles is a lot more consistent now. The angle at which you hit the vehicle doesn't seem to matter as much, so as long as you're behind a tank, you should be doing pretty good maxed out damage. Previously, a lot of vehicles felt like you were heavily penalized for not landing the perfect shots, or it wasn't really clear why you weren't always doing max damage. Now, I've had a lot of fun in vehicles before this patch, but after this patch, I think they're far more accessible, and I think a lot of people who maybe just weren't excited about using vehicles in BF6 should definitely come back and give them a try, because everything just feels cleaner, better from all perspectives. Now, there's also 3 new guns with this patch: the L115 sniper rifle, the M16A4 assault rifle, and the RPK-74 light machine gun. These are all classics, and I have loved them in past Battlefield games. You will, however, have to unlock their progress via the Battle Pass. The paid Battle Pass includes some instant unlocks, but you'll need to grind through the same number of tiers. And you can now buy the Pro version that unlocks the first 25 tiers instantly. So far, I've unlocked the L115, and it feels pretty good. It feels like a sniper rifle. Checking out the cosmetic rewards for this season, they look fine. Lots of tactical looking outfits that fit the game's tones and themes, but also lots of hoods and Hollywood actor looking campaign characters that feel a little bit out of place compared to the more nameless grunt characters that we've been used to. And one of the bigger question marks for the release cadence of Season 3 and the seasons beyond this is this single map approach still the right way to go? I am absolutely loving the new Golmud map, but also just playing it on repeat over and over and over isn't my favorite way to enjoy the content. It seems like DICE is progressing towards a map approximately a month for, I don't know, potentially the foreseeable future, which would be great. But Would you guys rather those maps were stacked up in bigger groups? I would say even 2 maps together would be a massive improvement over the 1 map at a time cycle, but I'm willing to bet that DICE has some metrics saying that the amount of exposure and player retention they get from just doing the single map cycle is actually the best way to go. RedSec launched about 7 months ago and has more or less been the same with some general balance tweaks and performance improvements, but otherwise, I'm not finding a particularly big draw to go back and play it, perhaps when permanent solos mode is released. Now, I gotta say, aside from DICE releasing a fantastic large-scale map, which is just what I've really been wanting from this game since launch, and it seems like they have a lot more in store for us with the upcoming seasons, but they're also shying away from some of that muted color palette that they had for a lot of their starting maps with the game, where Golmud is just vibrant. It's beautiful. It's kind of breathtaking. It reminds me a bit of Battlefield 5 that wasn't as afraid to use some of those saturated color tones, and I really appreciate it here. I hope DICE sticks with it for some of their upcoming maps based on some of the even preview footage that they showcased to kind of tease those new seasons. The colors did look quite good. Now, I'll say I'm hearing from basically all my Battlefield friends and other just veteran Battlefield players that they are loving this map. What I am curious to know, though, is how are Battlefield 6 players enjoying the map? Because if you've really been loving Battlefield 6 with its more small or medium-sized maps, this might actually not be your preference. And I'm curious to see what the data reflects on Golmud. Like, is it going to be a hugely popular map? Or is it going to be a map that caters mostly to veteran players who are trying to recapture some of those glory days from the past games? The next map on the lineup will be Cairo Bazaar, which should be on the smaller to medium-sized scale if it follows the original map layout pretty faithfully. I'm excited for that one too, not necessarily because it's just another medium-sized map, but because from Battlefield 3 it really was one of the better balanced maps that really seemed to focus on gameplay flow over just big flashy visuals, and so I cannot wait to see what the re-envisioning of that map is like in BF6. So far though, Season 3 is starting off really well. The changes, the balance updates are all extremely welcome. We know that DICE has a lot more in store for us when it comes to overhauls and new features. The Golmud remake is fantastic. It's definitely one of my favorite maps right now. Hopefully I don't burn out on it by just playing it over and over again, but it really proves that BF6 plays so incredibly well at a larger scale, and the map rework has fixed so many things about the original map. In fact, I wasn't excited to hear that they were remaking Golmud, but the remake just looked at the first map, said what was wrong with it, let's fix all of that stuff, and so it feels, in a way, kind of like an entirely different map. Infantry players can fight each other, there's long-range sniping, there's great tank battles, there's good infantry versus tanks, the air vehicles have plenty of room to fly around and explore, but none of them feel particularly dominant, and so I just want to give DICE some props for making a fantastic map. Next up, check out this video on the best large-scale Battlefield maps that DICE has ever made. In fact, I might have to add Golmud to that list. But check out that video and let me know what you think of my list. Are there any that you would add to it or remove from it? As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.